listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. And Michael, we resume our series of talking to cool and interesting people about the sport that we love, and that is the National Football League. And joining us on today's episode, an 8-year NFL veteran, NFL analyst for NBC, co-host of PFT Live, and the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast. You can find him at CSimsQB on Twitter. It's the one and only Chris Sims. Chris, how we doing? How's the summer treating you, man?
Oh, it's been great, man. I can't complain. You know, I'm happy that I'm one of the cool people that gets to come on the show this time of the year. It's always good to be in, like, you know, the cool, like the trust
your
tree,
dad's
the cool
category.
Tree there. But
yeah, your dad was on it, so he's cool.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I thought I was cooler than him. I mean, shit. So, sorry. Okay. But, yeah, either way, I'll take that. I'll take Big Phil's category.
Yeah, nothing like Big Phil. I love Big Phil. All right, so let's start off. You know, I know you haven't watched everything, but what's been your reaction to the Saquon Barkley, Joe Shane, Hard Knocks thing reveal that we've seen in the last 2 weeks?
Well, the public pressure of the New York tri-state area, Saquon Barkley, the polarizing, talented football player where I think a lot of Giants fans looked at it and went, wait, he's the only, maybe one of the few blue chip guys we got on the football team. So there's a lot of, what do I want to say? People have latched onto him and his talent. But the Giants, I think what I would look at is it was a situation where, I don't know if they knew exactly how to handle it, right? And the conversations behind the scenes, of course, have been very good as well. I've enjoyed watching it. The one thing I think that jumps out to me too, Mike, and I don't know where you're alluding to this a little bit, but just like, hey, one thing I look at is like, it's great that Dayball and the coaches don't got to be in the limelight and all this, and that all the pressure's on the front office and all these shows and all that. But no, again, I don't know. Do I have a problem with the way they handled the situation? I'm not sure I have a problem with that situation at all and what they handled it. And I think, they did the best they could do as far as juggling it and trying to figure out and trying to keep a guy that I think they wanted to keep, but yet they didn't want to make a long-term investment to and be stuck there with that. And we know why at the running back position.
Yeah, and general manager Joe Shane alluded to, like, he kind of goes by that once you reach 27 years old, he gets skeptical about what the running back can do post 27. Sure. So that was one of the data points that he talked about. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's kind of how he's going to make those decisions. But one thing that we've discussed, and this goes back to even before last season, we've discussed it so far this offseason as well, is Daniel Jones. He's coming off of the ACL injury. You had him at number 23 in your top 40 QB countdown. You have him in the shit or get off the pot category. And it's like, they paid him $40 million. It feels like they're kind of just like the buyer's remorse is out there despite what they might say.
Well, yeah, they might have. Mike, I want to hear what you think about the Saquon stuff there, because I haven't heard what you've said. I've kind of been off the radar a little bit. So I haven't been all in my NFL world all there. So I want to get back to that. But with the Daniel Jones thing, buyer's remorse, all the things that came out at the combine, I understand that to a degree. Listen, Mike and I have this conversation all the time. I don't think they needed to pay him $40 million a year to begin with. Who are they bidding against that was going to come in and steal Daniel Jones and give him $40 million? That's a big mistake, I think, being made across the NFL right now, right? Why are we paying mid-level quarterbacks like, they have all these options and they have all the bargaining leverage and all that, right? I would argue the same thing with Tua and what we got in Miami right now. I would. But my big thing with Daniel Jones and where I would defend him, and again, I know he is not Mahomes or Burrow or Josh Allen, but I'm not one that's going to give up on Daniel Jones completely here. One, he's a guy that's smart. He is a guy that can handle the New York criticism up here. I like that. He's big. He runs really well, like one of the best running quarterbacks in football, right? And he's a pretty accurate thrower. Now, the things that I'll say, like, in his defense, too, is what does anybody expect him to do when you play for that offensive line last year? And, of course, they had a tough start to the schedule last year, but That's where I'm always amazed by the expectations, where I want to go, wait, I'm watching film. Here's a guy that's got 1.2 seconds to throw a football before he gets his head knocked off. There's no big time receivers out there that a defense is changing their game plan to, right? We all saw the Seattle Seahawks Monday Night Football game where he took 11 sacks, and I would sit here and go, it should have been 22 if it weren't for the greatness of his ability to get out of some of the sacks and run. So I guess I'm a little bit of a defender of him there, and I think you can win with Daniel Jones. Do I think he's a take over the game superstar? No, I probably don't. And I wish he was a little more aggressive of a leader, but I find myself more times than not looking at it and going, he's been in one of the worst situations in football his whole career. And it's been not like one of the worst offensive lines. For the majority of his career, it has been the worst offensive line in football, not even close. And that's got to change. And I don't care who you got playing at quarterback. It's hard to be successful like that.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. Okay, but Joe Shane says you can't pay somebody $40 million and hand the ball off. Although I don't know if he's paid attention to Lamar Jackson making 50 and handing it off to Derrick Henry, or paid attention to you know, some of the other guys in the league that hand it off that make a ton of money. I mean, other than Pat Mahomes, I think the biggest misconception, and you've played the position, so you know every quarterback, maybe with the exception of Mahomes, has to be managed correctly. And I think that I'm not a true believer in the running back, but I do think Saquon helps Daniel Jones. If you're going to be an 11 team, the back is the point guard. Where I have issues with it, Christopher, is to me, when I watch it, you know, going back to the day your dad was drafted in '79 with George Young, I don't get a vision or a sense of this is the Giant way. I get a sense of we're just going to we're selecting talent. Everything is picked based on a light item basis. And I think they've lost their way in the sense that they were one of the cornerstone franchises. As you know, growing up, they were big, physical, and tough, and they had this identity. And now they bring Shane Bowen in to tell them what they're going to be on defense, which to me goes against, it's counter to everything what they believed. And you can't deny that they've only won 36% of their games since Tom Coughlin has left. This is their fourth coach they've been on. And they're just kind of grasping. And so when he says we can't pay somebody $40 million to hand it off, yeah, you better pay somebody. The Eagles are paying $50 to hand it off to Barkley, the same player. And I got no sense that they saw any competition in Barkley when there was, you and I both know, Houston and the Eagles were all over Barkley.
100%. You know, you said a lot of things there. I think, you know, with Daniel Jones and like you talk about, I mean, you're right. I mean, listen, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year because of their run game and their defense. Mahomes is special. But, you know, to your point with Josh Allen and what he is, right? Josh Allen, I think we would both agree, is one of the most talented guys ever. He needs a little help. You need help. You definitely do. And, you know, to say, okay, you know, we with a quarterback, the $40 million, and you can't pay him to hand them off the ball. Yeah, I totally do not agree with that sentiment. First off, $40 million is not breaking your franchise. Second off, I don't, you know, Daniel Jones' skill set, and I had this argument before, right? I mean, listen, I don't think there's as big a gap between a Jalen Hurts and a Daniel Jones maybe as the rest of the public does, right? I'd sit there and argue in some instances. I go, wait, if I need a big throw on 3rd and 9, I think I might take Daniel Jones to make that throw in the pocket. Now to scramble, make something off schedule, I don't know. Maybe I'll give Jalen Hurts, but Daniel Jones isn't that far behind. And I'll say too, like, hey, I've never seen Jalen Hurts run for an 80-yard run. I've seen Daniel Jones do it. You know, I think he gets a little underrated in what he's talking about. And what I would, you know, also defend with the Joe Shane comments as far as, you know, we're not paying them $40 million to hand off. Well, they can't do anything else. What else are they going to do? I mean, you watch the games. It's catch the ball, it's duck. It's catch the ball, it's move. It's catch the ball, and it's like just an absolute shitstorm at times for Daniel Jones. And again, Mahomes might be able to get away with that. Josh Allen can get away with that to a degree, as we know. But I just don't think the support system's there for Daniel Jones for us to look at him and totally have a complete feel for what he is as a player. That's where I'll defend it. And again, I don't have any problem with their Saquon decision. I wanted to hear from you on the Saquon stuff and what your thought was there, though.
Well, I mean, I think Saquon is their best player. And I think, to me, to make Daniel Jones effective, you need more than just a good off. I mean, I don't know. They talked about, well, we got to protect the quarterback. Is Luminor can't play guard, but they're going to play him at guard because they're married to Evan Neal at right tackle, who's a turnstile, right? And they signed Runyon, to play guard. And so I don't know what they've really done. They've drafted Schmidt. Thomas is a really good player. They hit on that, but they haven't really put any resources into their offense. Well, they haven't hit with the resources, let me say this. And then this year they're talking about protecting Daniel Jones. They don't even draft anybody. So, I just don't get a sense when I watch it. There's a sense of team building. This is who we are, and this is how we're going to build the team. I get a sense that everything's managed on a line item basis.
Well, that's where I wanted to go back to it, because you said a lot of things. You talked about the Giants, their team, right? I mean, you said it right. I mean, the Giants, since I was a little kid, were the team that walked on the field where everybody was like, whoa. I mean, look at the size of the New York Giants. Look how physical and big they are. They did lose their way, right? I mean, they lost their way, because Tom Coughlin, and they were, maybe a little too hasty to get rid of him. And then the other aspect is, the turnstiles at the coaching, as far as head coaches. I think we would all agree, or at least I would say, I didn't love the Dave Gettleman hire at GM. There were some issues there. You certainly can question Joe Judge and whether he deserved to be a head coach at that moment. And then I think when you look at some other problems with the franchise that led up to where we are right now, because I think you said it right, the Giants have lost their way. The Eli Manning, if we do this and we do that and we do this and we do that, Eli could still be really good. That cost the team 3 or 4 years of development because they tried to put Band-Aids on to justify Eli at the end of his career. So there's a lot of things I think that go into that conversation. But I'm with you as far as the team building and the way it used to be with Giant football and what we see with really successful teams around the NFL right now. Yeah, it's hard to make sense of some of their moves at times. There's no doubt. And Mike, getting back to the run game thing, I hate that crap, right? Everybody's trying to tell me Brock Purdy's a top 10 quarterback. Well, let's see. Why is it? It's because they have a great offensive line and Shanahan and McCaffrey, right? I mean, you talked about Lamar Jackson. The Dolphins can run the ball damn well as we know it. The Rams became a running football team last year.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, we're rolling along here with Chris Sims on the GM Shuffle. Michael Lombardi, of course, hanging out with us. DraftKings VSiN is our show sponsor here. But Chris, we were talking about last segment the New York Giants. Obviously, we'll have a new episode of Hard Knocks coming up tomorrow night here on Tuesday. But let's transition a little bit over to some of these other quarterbacks. And before we get into your top 40s QB countdown, which I think is one of the more fun exercises every single season, I want to ask you about, of these quarterbacks that's coming off of injury. Daniel Jones is one of them, tore his ACL at the midway point last season. But you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Kirk Cousins now in Atlanta, Joe Burrow, Anthony Richardson, who only got a glimpse of him last season, then Deshaun Watson. Of those quarterbacks that's coming off of an injury, which one do you think is best set up for success in 2024?
Well, of course, Joe Burrow. I mean, one, he's got talent around him. Two, he's extremely talented and, top 3 or 4 most talented quarterbacks in the game, right? So, and I don't look at his injury to be quite as much to overcome with the offseason gymnastics of getting healthy, making sure it's right and all of that. Again, I know he's got to get comfortable with his grip and his grip strength and all that, but I haven't heard any problem from the people I know out there in Cincinnati. So, of course, I'll go with him. One, because of the injury, and like I said, two, because he's super talented and he has Jamar Chase and Higgins and all that. And the Bengals are a team that I think is on a mission this year. I really do. The other one after that, hey, Kirk Cousins is still, listen, mobility is never his game, right? He's going to do it with his mind, his anticipation, his ability to read defenses. So I still think he can be successful this year. I'm not saying I think, the Michael Penix pick and all that makes a whole lot of sense to me, right? That's another conversation. But, I think it's those two more than not that I look at, right? Watson, I don't know what to expect from Deshaun Watson. I don't. Right? He's got some talent, but damn, it's 3 years since he's played consistently consistent football or consistently good football. I don't know where that's going to go. So I got big questions about that. And Aaron Rodgers, kind of the same thing. Can Aaron Rodgers play the way Aaron Rodgers thinks he can play? That's what I don't know, right? And does Aaron Rodgers, can he stand back there and dance around and throw the ball all real quick and do all that stuff like he did in his heyday? I don't know if he can do that anymore. I don't. And his lack of aggressiveness to throw the football down the field concerns me. So, yeah, I'll go with Burrow and Cousins in that one.
Well, Watson to me is the enigma because I loved him. But when he had Will Fuller, he was a different quarterback. Remember the stats we used to see all the time? Will Fuller with Deshaun without him. Mm-hmm. And even though he's got Amari Cooper, they strayed for Jerry Jeudy. They've got, Elijah Moore in the slot. I mean, they got Njoku playing. I mean, they're good. Their skilled players are good. You just wonder when he's going to be good. So that one, for me, Cousins, I think the biggest misconception about Cousins is he's going to a team that lacks team speed. When you break down Atlanta and you understand the longest pass play last year was a screen to Algier. Their second longest pass play was a screen to Robinson. Their third longest pass play was a screen to Jonnu Smith. Now, you can say Arthur Smith is not a good coach. You're full of shit if you say it, right? The guy's a really good offensive coach. Now, did he have speed? I don't see the speed on offense that everybody thinks Atlanta has. Well, Kyle Pitts, people put a corner on Kyle Pitts, and it's just he can't win. He's not a tight end. They treat that. I have these analytical people tell me they're the Falcons were the least amount of 11 personnel team in the league, and they get killed for it. What do you think Kyle Pitts is? He's a receiver. They're in 11 all the time when he's in the game.
Right. No, you said it all right there. I am a big Arthur Smith fan. I think part of that equation too, Mike, and what we're talking about and some of that stats you talked about their offense were something that I started the year off last year saying, and I said this coming out. Desmond Ridder is a below average starting NFL quarterback as far as total play and definitely as a thrower of the football. It's a below average arm, right? It's below average accuracy and control. So I think that affected their offense a lot. But I'm with you in the Arthur Smith stuff. Now, the one thing I do like, again, is Kirk Cousins is going to have they're going to have a good offensive system that I think he's very comfortable with, right? It's the McVay O'Connell system, so there's going to be no issues there. And the one thing they did in the offseason that I really like is Darnell Mooney. I think he fits what you're talking about. Now they can send Darnell Mooney deep, who can really fly, take the top off the defense, do whatever, but he can be that presence. And now you can have Pitts and London kind of work the underneath, the intermediate routes. And I think that's where I do like that. But I still look at them and go, hey, with that offensive line and that guy at running back, again, I know you don't pay the quarterback to hand the ball off. I still think it should start right there with that. And then that'll open some of those big shots down the field for their offense.
All right, I want to get into your top 40 QB countdown because I think this is a fun exercise you do every single year. Patrick Mahomes, surprise, number 1. But when I go down the list, I get down to number 20, the chosen one, Caleb Williams for the Chicago Bears. Now, I think Bears fans will probably go out and say that the GM shuffle has been pouring cold water on the hype surrounding the Chicago Bears this offseason, but I want you to make the case. Like, what have you seen from Caleb Williams to where you name him the chosen one before we've seen him take a snap in an NFL game?
Well, let me give a little background. Like a lot of years, right? Like, last year I had C.J. Stroud in a tier by himself coming out in the draft, right? I thought he was special. Some of these guys, though, throughout the years, even back to Mahomes early in his career, I chickened out their first year without seeing them play with putting them up as high as, ultimately they ended up playing. So I kind of looked at that before I did my list this year. And, of course, I believe in Caleb Williams. I think he's a special football player. I mean, really, to me, about as talented as I've seen come out. I mean, up there with the Mahomes or the Burrow type of film and stuff like that, where I just went and slam dunk. Jaden Daniels would be a number 1 quarterback most years, but I thought Caleb Williams was that special. Now, where does it start? I mean, first off, his arm is special, right? Arm power, arm strength, off-platform sidearm. He's the best I've ever seen in college football do that, right? That's the Mahomes factor because he got to grow up and watch Mahomes, so he's got it all in the college game. Not even Mahomes had all those throws in his college days at Texas Tech. So that's where it starts first. Then you talk about play in the pocket and decisions and all that. Okay, you could maybe pick at him a little bit. He's a little too aggressive. He has a little too much confidence in his right arm. Okay, but that's commonplace for all quarterbacks with great arms coming out in college football. And within that, he only threw 5 damn interceptions last year. It's not like it was like, an interception fest every week. And then after that, working the pocket, reading the field, he's the best scrambler I maybe ever have seen. Now, when I say scramble, his ability to move in the pocket, buy time, or gets outside of the pocket to make a throw down the field, it's as good as I've ever seen in college football. And then his running is damn good as well, as we know. So that's where I love him. Now, there's things out there about his character and all that I understand that the NFL world is a little worried about. But I'm not. And I'm a big fan of Caleb Williams.
Do you think they have enough offensive line to protect the kid? Look, the kid fumbled quite a bit. I mean, he is ball security in the pocket. You can't deny that. And I agree with everything you said about his arm. What I hate about people talking about the quarterbacks, look, it's like a center fielder who doesn't have any errors, right? That means he ain't getting any balls. Quarterback that doesn't throw the ball into tight windows isn't, he's not making any plays. It's Daniel Jones, it's Desmond Ridder, it's Kyler Murray now. They average 7 yards per attempt. I mean, you can't win games like that. It's Trevor Lawrence. You can't win games like that. You've got to be able to drive the ball down the field, and you got to be able to put it into tight windows 20 yards down the field. That's what makes you. So I worry about their offensive line. I worry about them being an 11 team with Odunze in the slot or whomever they put in the slot, and their line not being able to protect the kid.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, it's going to be a West Coasty type of system, right? They'll have ways to get the ball out of his hand. Now, where I'll fight against you in the ball security stuff a little bit, right? And you got to deal with this with all people. Again, Mahomes and Josh Allen, Stafford, the year he won the Super Bowl, led the NFL in interceptions. Brady was up there. You got to be aggressive and make plays. The year of, I'm going to be Aaron Rodgers and throw 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, I would go, if you're having those type of stats, listen, more times than not, you're not being aggressive enough, and you're going to lose to the 49ers in the divisional round when you're the number 1 seed because you're worried about your quarterback ranking and all of that. Now, so I am a fan of, again, being aggressive at the quarterback position right now in the NFL. I am. And what I would fight with you a little bit, Mike, with the ball security thing with him is, hey, their offensive line sucked last year. I mean, sucked. It was a fire alarm every time he dropped back to throw. Mm-hmm. And he felt the burden of trying to carry the team and do that to where I think he'll make these adjustments. Now, the offensive line, listen, I hear you. But I'm a little bit more of a believer in it than I think maybe the public. They showed the ability to run the ball last year, and I think it would have even been better with something I think you agree with me, is if they had a quarterback there last year. We had to worry about the pass game all the time, right? Because Justin Fields, of course, you're always playing for the run game. They're always playing run game, and we're managing him with boots and screens and all that. I think you're going to see a different offense and a different plan of attack, and I'm one of those that would say you're cold water on the Bears. I'm a believer in the Bears. I am. I would say they're one of the teams I'd say watch out for.
Yeah, the Chicago Bears win total 8.5 at our show sponsor, DraftKings. We got about 2 minutes left here, Chris. I want to ask you this because you have your top 6 and your top 40 quarterbacks. The damn okay, the 4 through 6 there. Which quarterback outside of that has the best chance to get into that damn okay kind of category between C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, and Brock Purdy? Which one of those guys can get into that category by the end of this season?
Well, I mean, I'd go C.J. Stroud, right? C.J. Stroud's special to me. But, I mean, the other guys you talked about, it's not far off. Trevor Lawrence, listen, he's just got to be a little more consistent. His good is unbelievable good. Like, you go, wow, he's maybe one of the most talented quarterbacks in football. Turnovers, inappropriate pace on the football at times, trying to force it in there has caused them. Jordan Love, man, the second half of the season was unbelievable. And, man, he is a guy off platform, can do all the things that we talk about, that the great ones. But C.J. Stroud would be the one that I believe in the most there.
Love it. Thank you. I love your energy, man. Appreciate you coming on with us. I really do, Christopher. It's been great. There's so much we could go on and on and on this subject. I mean, look, it's a big year for Lawrence. It's a big year for Doug Peterson. It's a big year for Jacksonville.
Another segment. I don't care.
Impromptu? Our producer,
Let's
Ellie,
do it.
Let's run it. Let's do another segment. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll do another segment because I wanted to ask you about some other quarterbacks, but we were running up against it. But Chris Sims, gracious enough with his time to hang out with us for another segment. So for the DraftKings Network crew, we will see you guys next week. Sorry, we'll see you guys later on this Thursday. But for our GM Shuffle podcast crew, we'll be back on the other side. Chris Sims hanging out with us, NFL analyst for NBC, always on the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast, and PFT Live is going to hang out with us here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, we're hanging out. Bonus segment with Chris Sims here on the GM Shuffle. We'll talk some more quarterbacks. And Chris, I wanted to ask you about Jalen Hurts for the Philadelphia Eagles because 2 years ago, he was almost going to win the MVP. They go all the way to the Super Bowl. He played a phenomenal game in that Super Bowl, but they lose out to the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, they start 10-1. Everything's going well, and then it just all falls off a cliff. And in fact, Jalen Hurts threw 15 interceptions a season ago. That was combined 15 over the last 2 years in 2021 and 2022. He did it in one season in 2023. How do you think that this Kellen Moore change now as the offensive coordinator will help Jalen Hurts? And do you like this as a fit in Philadelphia between Moore and Hurts?
Well, I'm not sure all the way, right? You know, I do think it's an upgrade from what they were last year. There's no doubt about that. I mean, they lost their way on the offensive side of the ball last year, right? You know, with Jalen Hurts and me, it's come full circle. That's the world we're in, right? The year he was going to the Super Bowl, I had everybody telling me he was the best quarterback in football. And I was like, you guys are crazy. He's not the best quarterback. He's not top 5. He's not top 6 or 7. Like, get out of here, right? Their team is awesome. It's phenomenal that way, right? I'll even push back against you. Great Super Bowl, I guess. Everybody else would be blamed if they blew a 10-point lead and had a monumental turnover that was returned for a touchdown. I don't know. Anybody else I know in quarterback history has got eviscerated for that. For some reason, he gets the free pass of, it was a great game that you blew a 10-point lead after halftime and had a monumental turnover. All right, so that's my edginess there with Jalen Hurts.
I love it.
But here's the other side of that, right? I saw like growth with Jalen Hurts as far as throwing in the pocket last year. I think that's the encouraging thing, right? They were not as dominant running the football and as a complete football team where when I went back for my quarterback rankings and went through it, the one thing I was like, whoa, man, Hurts made a lot more throws this year than he did even in the Super Bowl year. Now, again, there's great talent around him, as we know, and that was a monumental collapse there. But I think what I want to see is, you know, Kellen Moore, like spread offense, all of that. I don't know if that's exactly his forte, but I would expect that they don't abandon that formula too much because when you got that tight end and those two receivers on the outside with a running game and 11 personnel, you put teams in a big bind right now with his ability to run Saquon, the best offensive line in football, and then two receivers that you'd like to double on the outside. So he's got great advantages that way. But again, I've seen progress there. And so this year, so I was crazy there the year they went to the Super Bowl because I said he wasn't one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks. Now, this past year, I made him number 9 on my quarterback list, and I got eviscerated because that was too high. I was being too nice, and my head wanted to blow up. I was literally like, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to get on me for that. But I do think it'll be improvement there in Philadelphia on both sides of the ball, of course, because we know there was issues there throughout the year.
Well, I mean, look, here's the reality. I agree. I thought he made progress in anticipation of throws, but this is a team that lives off play action pass, right? So they scored 204 points in the second quarter last year, 2 years ago, and they played from in front in most every single game, which then allowed their pass rush to excel, where they had 60 of their 70 sacks from their defensive front. So to me, this goes back to the Shane line. You know, we can't hand the ball off and pay a guy $40 million. Every quarterback needs symmetry between offense, defense, and the kicking game. You know, because when they got into a situation where they couldn't run the ball because they got behind, all of a sudden now people rushed him a certain way. They made him move to his left. His eye level went way down, and that became a concern. So it's like it's all about how you enhance the quarterback. I think that's the issue for me with Trevor Lawrence is, like, Trevor Lawrence, I never feel like they're running what he needs to be more effective. Like, they keep saying, you're generational, so carry the team, when no quarterback other than Mahomes is really in that line of duty. Like, I just think Lawrence needs more play action. His best thing at Clemson was when he ran the ball at Clemson. He's a little Daniel Jones-ish.
Yeah, great.
When he can run it. But the problem is he's thin and he's light and he gets the shit kicked out of him. But I don't know if the system matches the player's skill set.
I would be with you there. That, again, Trevor Lawrence and what they do there, it's a little too West Coasty at times, right? He's a big arm quarterback. Protect him up. Let him throw the ball down the football field a little bit. Don't make him jam it into 6-yard throws into tight windows all the time. But I would say, Mike, again, back to our running game thing, you're exactly right. That would be the reason Trevor Lawrence fell off last year. I mean, again, offensive line play was bad. They couldn't run the ball worth a damn. And like Jalen Hurts, and I'll say with Trevor Lawrence, I don't think their offensive passing games were creative enough to carry the football team when the run game doesn't work. And that's what I'm kind of excited to see with the Philadelphia thing, right? Is Kellen Moore going to put Jalen Hurts underneath center a little bit more and play that way? I'm interested to see the wrinkles in which he brings to the offense, right? But still, with Jalen Hurts, I like the improvement. We saw that. He's a tremendous leader. He's tough as hell. But I will say, too, the stigma around him in the NFL, and I think you know this as well. When I talk to teams that play the Eagles, they always go, we want him to play quarterback. And what they mean is, they don't want him running and scrambling, and they don't want their run game to get off. And then if you make him play in the pocket, teams still feel like that's advantage defense when he's doing that. Now, he's closed that gap, and we'll see where that goes. And hopefully that continues to improve there in Philadelphia because we know they're damn, damn good.
Yeah, maybe Kellen Moore gives them another kind of notch there, and they can take another step forward of the passing game.
Right.
I do want to ask you about the Carolina Panthers. This is a team that we don't talk about ever because they were the worst team in football last year. Nobody really talks about them. But Bryce Young, who was the number 1 overall pick a season ago, now entering into year 2, now has Dave Canales as his play caller as a first-time head coach. Did you see any sort of glimmer of hope in Bryce Young's tape last year that could show that, hey, he could still be the guy that we thought pre-draft a season ago? Or is he maybe just, hey, the Panthers whiffed on that thing and he's just not going to be a very good player?
Well, I think they have to follow a certain formula, right? He's nowhere near for me thinking like, oh, he's going to be able to take over a game and help a team out, right? Again, like we expect a top quarterback to do. I know, Mike says Mahomes is the only guy in football. I would say, hey, Josh Allen would be right up there with him. I do think Josh Allen can carry a football team. But at the same time, I think they made the proper moves here in making a big offensive line, right? Almost taking the New Orleans Saints Drew Brees approach. Let's just get huge guys up here so he could feel safe and not have people around him, right? And then they're gonna run the ball. And I think that's how you got to do it to kind of groom him. But am I concerned about what I saw from him? No doubt about it. When I broke him down on my podcast or on Pro Football Talk, my big thing was, hey, not only is it underwhelming, it was tough to watch. He looked overwhelmed on film at times, right? He missed throws that you'd expect the NFL quarterback to make. And I still worry about his size. I do. Again, size is a skill, and people miss out on that. Mahomes is a big guy. Josh Allen's a big guy. Herbert's a big guy. They can make throws in the pocket with people on them, hitting them, bumping them, and they can still make the throw down the football field. He cannot do that. In fact, in times he has to just duck and take the sack. When I go, man, most quarterbacks would stand in there and just take the shot and get hit in the chest. He's so light and frail that he's not even capable of doing that. So I think they've made the proper moves to work with him. But no, I'm a little concerned with what I saw last year, right? And I made him number 2 coming out in the draft 2 years ago, and I knew about a month into the draft process when everybody told me Anthony Richardson was really smart and all over football and all that. I was like, man, he's more of a quarterback than I realized. I probably should have made him 2 and made Bryce Young number 3.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about Anthony Richardson. I mean, look, this Colt team with Gardner Minshew's a completed pass away from beating the Houston Texans, who everybody loves. And Richardson wasn't there for the majority of the season. 15 games he wasn't available for, 13 or 14. Where do you see them? For me, the South in both the NFC and the AFC is almost a dartboard thing. I can't pick the winner in the South in the NFC or the AFC. But what do you think of Indy's chances?
I like Indy. It's a good football team, right, throughout. The thing I've questioned with them on the defensive side of the ball is, do they have enough splash players, right? Guys that can go above and beyond the system and make plays that way. That's kind of been my issue there with them the last few years, right? Offensively, I think at times you can kind of say the same thing, especially if Jonathan Taylor and the run game aren't going, because I love Michael Pittman Jr. and some of their other receivers they have there. But Michael Pittman Jr. is not that guy that's going to catch a slant, make somebody miss, and run for 80 yards. He's not a game breaker that way. He's really damn good, don't get me wrong, right? So they miss some of the sizzle players, I think, is what I look at, right? But overall, I don't look at one position group to go, oh, wow, that's weak, right? I love Shane Steichen. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in the game, and that's why Philly fell off last year, back to that conversation, right? But yeah, I have questions about Richardson and the fact that I know he's supremely talented. He has superstar traits. We get that. But again, going back when I watched film of all these guys for my quarterback rankings and all that, it's still raw as hell, right? I mean, they managed him to an unbelievable degree, right? So that's where I'm just, am I sold that, hey, if they can't run the ball and Shane Steichen, can't come up with the greatest game plan on a week-in, week-out basis, can Anthony Richardson carry them or get them through some tough times with his right arm? No, I still think there's work there to be done. He only played 1 year in college football. His big thing is he hasn't played enough, and I don't think he's really nuanced at the quarterback position quite yet.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with that completely. I think he's going to get better the more he plays. I mean, the reps, he just doesn't. Exactly. His talent shows you, his talent takes over the game, but he's, you and I both know in December, 3rd and 8, we need this throw. We got to make a play, and you can't run with it. You got to make a play, and that's the one that gets you.
That's the one that gets you. Exactly right. I know they'll have creative ways to get some people open and run him a little bit and run the ball with Jonathan Taylor. But like you said, you get late in the year against the good defenses and they start to take away some of your normal every game tricks. And now it becomes, hey, you better make some throws in the pocket. I think that's, the box we need to see checked before I, put them up in the top 20 quarterbacks in football, at least.
Yeah. Chris, this was a lot of fun, man. This was a lot of fun breaking down these quarterbacks.
Appreciate you.
We could do this for 2 more hours, but we all have obligations that we cannot do this for 2 more hours. But we appreciate you hanging out and being flexible with us throughout this podcast. Obviously, we encourage everyone to check out Chris's podcast, Chris Sims Unbuttoned, PFT Live. You find him on Twitter at CSimsQB. Enjoy the rest of the offseason, man. This is a whole lot of fun.
You know it. Hey, I'm here.
What's
I
left
always
of
love
the
coming out with
offseason?
you guys. Mike's my buddy. So you let me know if you ever want me again. I'm down.
Awesome. Elliot will be contacting you, I'm sure, throughout the rest of the summertime. That does it for us here on this edition of the GM Shuffle. As always, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. And on our YouTube page, make sure you like on there, subscribe to the DraftKings YouTube page, comment as well. We want to see all the comments that you guys have to say about our podcast. So for Michael Lombardi, I'm Femi Abebefe, for our producer Elliot Bowman, who's with us on the ones and twos. We'll see you guys later on this week.